Just to kind of start introductions, my name is ADRIENNE HANNA, and I'm the founder and CEO of Right Revenue. And for any of you who know me for the last sort of 20 years, I've had a lot to say about revenue management, so it's great to be on stage with three, not just incredible women, but three incredible leaders in our industry. So I'm going to let you introduce yourself. Actually, maybe can I start with you, Heather?
Thank you. Heather Hart. I know many of you, I'm a bit of a dinosaur, been around for rather a long time, but mostly in revenue management for many, many years of my career, and then got very much engaged in meetings and events, revenue management, and started a little company called Smart Space, focusing on meetings and events strategy, and now just doing a bit of training and consulting.
VERYAN?
So my name is VERYAN Palmer. Again, I know a few people in the room here. So I am a director at my family's hotel down in Cornwall, the Headland, and we've had the hotel for 43 years. We are proudly independent, proudly non-branded, and yeah, we are in the most beautiful part of Cornwall, which, in case you hadn't seen the media this summer, was absolutely sort of overrun with tourists this summer.
Samantha, anything you want to add?
No, I think... Well, you can't hear me, so louder.
Allow me to present you with my
I dare you to burst
Thank
into
you,
ABBA
feeling very
noise.
special. Yeah, everybody knows me, so my name is Samantha Williams, as you saw earlier. I'm the Global Business Development Manager for Profit Room, and yeah, we support hoteliers in increasing their profits through increasing direct reservations.
Perfect. Well, today the title of our panel is, and I have to apologise in advance for my Northern Ireland accent, so I'll try and speak very slowly. The title of our panel is Short-Term Profit versus Long-Term Loyalty, but with rate strategies, people crisis, customer perception kind of at the forefront of everyone's mind. I wonder, is it maybe simply just that we should be talking about pricing versus reputation? VERYAN, if I maybe can start with you, because at the end of the day, you've had like full-on first-hand knowledge of this. So we know that most of our rural, resort, and even some of our city centre properties have had, massively successful summers. Staycation being the word of the year, I think, and in the words of my wonderful friend Janelle, I think she coined the phrase reluctant staycationer, which I think describes most of our guests. But with skyrocketing ADRs, incredible occupancies, and we were all trying to drive rate. But with staffing being an issue, service being an issue, were we right to do that? Were we right to kind of push our rates during the summer? And should we continue doing that as we move into the last quarter of the year and into 2022?
So yes, Cornwall was overrun this summer. You couldn't get anywhere. You couldn't get a restaurant table anywhere. If you were a guest who's coming to Cornwall for the first time, maybe since your childhood, and you were used to 5-star, all-inclusive luxury in the Maldives, the fact you can't get a table anywhere caused a few issues. I bear the battle scars of that one. And I think, yes, we had a great summer. Our average daily rate doubled. We did have to shut 20 of our 91 bedrooms to look after the guests, but also to look after our staff, to ensure 2 consecutive days off. Everyone could have that. We knew what happened with staff burnout last summer. And it was just about making sure that our service levels stayed high when we could. I mean, when half your kitchen brigade gets COVID, you have to shut the restaurant. But working smarter, working in a more clever way. People don't need their newspapers delivered to their bedrooms. I know we're 5-star, but a lot of guests are quite happy to pick them up from the hostess desk as they walk into breakfast. So instead of having a porter running around the building delivering newspapers all over the place, people could just pick up their newspapers as they walked in. So we all became very adept at multiskilling, moving departments. Yes, our average rate was much higher. Most of our guests had seen in the media that there was a massive demand, but the majority were understanding. Okay. Some were very much not.
Okay, well, maybe that begs the question, VERYAN, if you were pushing rates this year, which, obviously you did, you've got a beautiful building to maintain, I know that as well. Do you think you'll get those rates next year? Do you think you'll get those repeat guests coming back next year?
we had a bit of a sort of double whammy. The Headland became 5-star in November 2019. So our first summer of sort of high rates being 5-star was going to be summer 2020, which we were kind of on the tail end of the horse. So we invested £10 million in a brand new aqua club with 6 pools. We've invested a lot in the spa, a lot in the bedroom. So I think the guests that did come had a wonderful holiday. First few days, maybe they were a bit like, oh God, why am I in Cornwall? And then they realised actually how beautiful and wonderful Cornish holidays are, and so will return. I think we're already seeing the effect this autumn of people who came in the summer and are coming back for a long weekend or a long sort of short sort of week stay in the sort of the shoulder months. So yes, our business is still at a record level even in November at the moment.
Okay. Samantha, I think with you being sort of a global company, you've got this overview of what else is going on in the world, not just in beautiful Cornwall. And I just wondered, had you any thoughts on that of what's happening within properties outside the UK, or even actually non-branded or not maybe the luxury end of the market? How did, sort of, I don't like to use the phrase, but ordinary hotels, hotels that maybe sit outside brand, deal with those challenges?
Yeah, absolutely. I can talk about the leisure industry in particular. So a lot of our hotels, like you, VERYAN, they noticed a almost double occupancy rate, not occupancy, ADR rate. The challenge that we're seeing now is more around loyalty. So with some of the mid-market hotels, they have perhaps priced out the people that would have returned year on year on year. And those guests perhaps couldn't afford the prices which were being charged this year thanks to the demand. It also brings a separate challenge, so where they're attracting new customers with higher expectations because they're paying the higher price point, and that brought a higher level of, let's say, service required, service expected, which hotels, not all of them could deliver high standards, not all of them took the principles that you took at the Headland to close some bedrooms to ensure you could keep that service level. The biggest challenge now moving forward, and something which we're talking to hoteliers about, is not what happens next year, but even the year after that. So we are encouraging hotels to segment their data, to target their database separately. For example, people that stayed this year, particularly in the southwest like Cornwall, they've paid a higher rate, and they probably shouldn't receive the same type of marketing as people who come the years before, because you have the risk of actually deterring your previous loyal guests because you've priced them out of the market. And on the flip side, if you don't make effort now to retain the new type of guest that's coming to experience the high level of product, then you're going to be looking in a couple of years' time to actually drop in loyalty because you haven't treated the two segments differently. That's really what we're targeting at the moment.
Okay, Heather, I'd really like your opinion on this, but before I ask your response, could I maybe quote something? It's just something I read the other day, and it was from Tony Capuano, I think. Sorry if I've mispronounced his name, CEO of Marriott. So guests are willing to pay higher rates, but their expectations are for services and amenities that they had prior to the pandemic. So they don't really care about our staffing and service issues. They want everything back up there. Can I ask what your thoughts are?
I think that's absolutely right. I think that, people will forgive this year. I think everyone, people generally are quite reasonable and understood the circumstances that were happening, and were just pleased to get away. Obviously, there were a few that weren't so reasonable, but generally speaking, going forward, though, I think the two things are planning and communication. So absolutely, I have no issue with hotels having my revenue management hat on. Pricing by demand. Demand was there, prices should be high, but you've got to be able to deliver, you've got to be able to back that up, or those customers won't return. So planning and forecasting, number one, I think that's what everybody missed this year, and of course it was very difficult because it kind of imploded. Nobody was sure when things were going to be lifted and so on. But we've got to be able to forecast effectively. We've got to be able to plan those times. We know staffing is going to be an issue, so we know service deliveries is going to be challenging. And things like taking blocks of rooms off, or as we're seeing now, keeping the restaurant closed, but you've got to communicate that to guests. So even if it's a question of you can't deliver your normal levels of service, preempt that by whether it's a tent card on the table or whether it's the greeting at the door or whatever that may be, to let customers know, set their expectations. And of course, you've got to balance that with pricing. But, you know, I think that the key thing is really plan.
I think it's maybe worthwhile kind of talking about our skill set here, because I'm very, very old, as you can see. And back in my days of working in hotels, we all know that you kind of get this period of people wanting you to be multi-skilled, and then, you know, having a unique skill, and then multi-skilled and whatever. Back in my day, it was very advantageous to have been able to work in different departments and be multi-skilled. Now, I think pre-pandemic, we had people who were rightly so given wonderful titles and really skilled at the job role that they were doing. Can I maybe put that back to you, Heather? What are your thoughts on that? Do you think we need this multi-skilled workforce, or do we need people who are really focused on one role?
I think as ever you need both. I think there's definitely been a lot of that cross because there's been fewer people. People had to, you know, just the bar, the restaurant. I think what customers don't want to see is, and I heard this anecdotally from some hotels, the same person that was checking them in was potentially making the beds and then serving them in the bar. That they don't necessarily want to see, but across skill sets, so across a food and beverage skill set, for example, having you normally wouldn't necessarily get a crossover from the bar to the restaurant, or meetings and events, or, you know, across those food and beverage areas, I think certainly multi-skilling well. And likewise, there's no reason why someone in the reservations team can't check someone in on the front desk. And of course, in a lot of small hotels, that happens anyway, it has to. But the key thing is not to lose specialisation. I think, you know, we shouldn't all become jack of all trades. There's always going to be a need for, you know, particular skills, and if you start to dilute those down, you absolutely start to lose business focus. And so it's just, again, it's finding that balance, and it kind of comes back to planning is the key.
We've got a lot more to cover, but I'd like maybe just to end that question, VERYAN, with you, if you don't mind. Is that something that you're doing actually in the Headland? And I know we had a brief conversation with this before, this kind of term people pandemic that we're moving into, which I hate the term, but do you think that's going to last the next 12, 18, 24 months? Like, what are you actually preparing for at the Headland?
We believe that probably the next 18 months is going to be tougher in Cornwall. We're going to be, if people do decide to go off to the Med, they'll be scrapping for business, which means that to a certain degree, for some operators, maybe even a race to the bottom with rates. And I think we've been very lucky. We've started our young person placements. We've got 32 14 to 16-year-olds working with us. I've got a team ranging from 14 to 82 years old. So we have a wide range of people. We have a lot of people working so from the local community helping us to stay open. People wanted us to stay open. We're a big employer in the local community. And yes, but recruiting staff will be challenging. But it has meant this summer, I mean, hey, I make a mean flat white. got my skills up this summer. But it did mean that a lot of our senior team actually went back to the floor. And there was definitely by autumn, well, I think after the first few shifts, a newfound respect from the senior team for some of those entry-level positions. And lo and behold, it's changed our whole training regime, which has been very good. So there has been some very big positives that have come out of it. But yeah, the next 18 months are going to be tough.
Okay, I'm going to move on because I think this is a really interesting question. I'd love to put this to you, Sam, because I know you've got some stats to share. As an industry, moving forward, do you feel that subscription pricing is going to be a thing? Is this going to be the next thing that's going to get us out of, kind of after COVID? And obviously subscription pricing being, paying up front and getting rewards throughout, let's say, a year or whatever. Is this going to be a thing?
This is a really interesting topic. It's a topic that we've been talking about a lot in recent years, not especially in the UK market, but lots of others. We get a lot of our learnings from the aviation industry. Obviously, we can look to dynamic pricing as an example. They were the first to launch it, and we've adopted it in quite a good way. Hoteliers are already introducing subscription models into their business. It's the dream to have recurring revenue, right? So hoteliers are becoming more adoptive of those systems. You'll probably notice them with things like golf subscriptions for memberships, spa memberships, things like this already. But actually how we get subscriptions to look after bed nights is a completely different challenge. It's definitely something which I believe will take off in the future. Hotels are starting to think about it now and what they're going to do. We have actually one client, Sun International in South Africa. You probably know them from Sun City. They have 19 resorts in South Africa. They were probably one of our first hotel partners to really launch a subscription model. Now 4% of their overall revenue comes in from this subscription. The subscription essentially gives the guest the ability to have access to negotiated rate plans, to reduced priced extras, so for example, safaris or activities online as well, and also rewards in terms of upselling rooms. They can also spend their points through this loyalty scheme, so I think the bigger question really is how subscription-based modules and loyalty will come together in the future.
Heather, your thoughts?
I can't say I'm a fan, and I know it's in very early stages. I think I can kind of see it coming out of the casino model. If there's good technology available to manage those types of things, I just have a lot of sympathy with the old res team, and starting to, a lot of these things are great marketing initiatives, but actually if there isn't the process and the technology to back it up, they end up doing a huge amount of manual work for probably not a huge amount of gain. The bigger issue I have with it, I think, is looking at the millennial generation, the Gen Z coming through. The buzzword seems to be they want something different. They want to try different experiences. Subscription pricing to me sort of goes back to, I have timeshare ringing in the back of my head, is people going back to the same place. For a brand, it's okay, where you've got lots of different options within the brand. But for an individual property or a small group of hotels to try and encourage that understood the loyalty, but actually people aren't going back to the same place time after time. The world is now their oyster. They want to go and have breakfast by a waterfall, or sitting with a rhino, or whatever that may be. It's not getting them to come back to the same place time after time with the use of subscriptions and so forth. I just am not convinced yet of the value of that in the hotel side of the market.
VERYAN, I'm going to have to put the question to you. Is there something in the luxury brand or at Headland you think you would maybe think about?
Absolutely not.
I love a straight answer.
I think this is where, yes, if you're part of a big brand, maybe, and you have a lot of corporate business, and you need to do everything you can to attract to someone say at a Hilton rather than at a Marriott, maybe. But generally, guests that come to five-star hotels, I'm going to say some, of course, are price sensitive, but generally we tend to find that people, they love the little moments of sort of sparkle and differentiation that we give them. So Mr. and Mrs. Smith checking in, they don't care if they're going to get £50 a night off. I mean, they might a bit. But generally, being greeted on arrival by name and going up to their room, and then 3 minutes after they've checked into their room, their two favourite cocktails arriving, being delivered by a waiter who uses their name. Hello, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, welcome back. I've brought you your favourite cocktails. You've had a long journey. I think you might need them. That is more for us than the pricing, discount pricing. I mean, hey, speak to me in 12 months' time. I might have a very different answer. But I think we have a huge number of return guests, and it's not because of the price. They come because of how special they're made to feel, how much they get to come and enjoy the beautiful little part of Cornwall we're in. And so sort of a subscription pricing model, I don't believe is for us.
Okay, well, I need to check into your hotel way more often if we're getting cocktails on arrival. Absolutely. We're kind of running out of time, but I think this is really an important one to touch on. We have a buzzword that's been kind of hanging around the industry for, 7, 8, 9 years now, and that is personalised pricing. Do you think it's something we should be considering as a strategy, or is it dangerous to assume what guests want? Heather, I'm going to throw you in under the bus on this one. Can I get your thoughts on that?
Whenever I read personalised pricing, I think, what exactly does that mean? I think probably more it's personalised product offering, perhaps more than pricing. And again, it relies a huge amount. Again, it's one of these things that shows a big differential between big brands with great technology and smaller independent hotels, because you need a huge amount of data to be able to do that well. Not only do you need the data, you really need the systems to analyse that data and come out with, what that recommendation should be, what that personalised pricing is. However, I then thought a little bit about my Tesco Club card. And I kind of related it to that, thinking, well, actually, they managed to give me offers, give me personalised discounts based on the things that I buy. But quite cleverly, out of 10 offers I might get, 8 of the things I buy and 2 of the things I don't buy. It's trying to encourage me to buy them. And so I think that there is a benefit potentially in that for hotels, obviously, to, if they really do know their customers well, if they can analyse that data and say, well, this guy stays with us 3 times a month, he always drinks in the bar, but he never eats in the restaurant. So let's give him a nice little voucher for the next time he comes to enjoy his pint in the bar, but let's also potentially give him an offer to entice him to come and eat in the restaurant instead of Harvester down the road or whatever that may be. So I think there's a place for it, but again, the danger is you've got to have the data, you've got to have the technology, and you've got to be able to really analyse what that's telling you, and you've got to do it well. If you don't do it well, no point doing it. And just as a slight aside, I'm just going to put my meetings and events hat on here and say, a lot of these initiatives, we constantly find new initiatives, personalised pricing, whatever that may be, for selling more bedrooms. And it was really interesting, it came up on the previous panel about what about all the other areas in hotels where we're leaving huge amounts of money on the table by not really focusing, strategising, revenue managing what we've already got, let alone trying to invest in and discover new ways. Not against innovation at all, but there's so much we're already not doing basically at the moment that would kind of, for me, be better to focus on.
Sam, if I maybe can ask, I obviously with Profit Room, I guess you're focusing on the personalised journey through the guest booking process. What's your thoughts on personalised pricing?
Exactly. We're very lucky with our technology because we have the built-in CRM. We also have integrated digital marketing. So we really understand the last time the guest was on the website, the last time they stayed, even before they look at booking their next stay. So, and we're a provider as well, mostly for independent leisure hotels and resorts. So we're kind of the middle guy providing technology for those hotels and resorts that do want to take the next step. For us, what we're seeing are more upsells, thanks to personalised pricing, more repeat bookings. So we introduced this element into our technology around 18 months ago, and since then we've seen an increased conversion of repeat customers of 13%. Now, of course, with the industry the way it is, I think more people have gone back and visited hotels they stayed with before because they feel more comfortable with the surroundings, obviously during the pandemic. But it's also recognition to that customer. Not all customers are triggered by added value. Some customers are triggered by the price. And it's more about upselling from a bed and breakfast rate into a package rate where our system really helps that conversion.
VERYAN, I'm going to go back again to that high-end luxury. Obviously that's your experience. Do you think it's dangerous to assume, or would you feel practically in the Headland it's dangerous to assume what your customers are looking for, or do you think it's something that you might consider?
Yes, I think so. We have the 91-bedroom hotel, we have 40 self-catering cottages, and in a lot of systems you'd say, oh, they don't intertwine and mix. We know they do. And I think we would fall into the trap with an automated system of Mr. and Mrs. Smith, who've always come and stayed in our low season, and so would be sort of effectively characterised into a bucket, a type of market segment. But hey, actually, next year they're coming for their 40th wedding anniversary. They're going to book the best suite for a week. If they don't receive the information because they've been characterised as this type of person who doesn't book the top-end suites, and so they don't get that marketing information, I think where with an independent hotel, you build up a real brand loyalty to you, and your customer trusts you. So I think a lot of the time it's about sort of we know our customers, we know what they want. Yes, we do some very targeted marketing. If you're a storm chaser, you're going to get us we're going to tell you when there's a big storm coming in, but ultimately, there'll still also be a little bit on our main emailer about it, the fact that, wow, look at this storm that came in. And I think there is a danger of segmenting people and forcing people into a particular, you believe, their sort of buying mind, which might not always be exactly as people behave. Everyone's quite unusual in certain ways.
Yeah. Are there anything you want to add there, just to end that off?
I think it does demonstrate it's kind of horses for courses. So I think there are some hotel brands, there are some hotel styles where it would work. There's some it certainly wouldn't necessarily. But yes, it just comes back to this flexibility of people, customers actually come for lots of different reasons, and again, it's a very complex thing to manage well. If you're going to get it right.
If I could add to that, I think the biggest thing that hoteliers need to be aware of, whether you use a CRM, whether you don't, whether you use segment pricing, whether you don't, it's really to make sure that you're not blanket marketing your whole database, because that will reduce in a lack of engagement moving forward.
Yeah, completely agree. Guys, we're nearly out of time. I've just been making some notes, and I guess if I had to sum up what we were chatting about today, just in some bullet points, it's kind of the people pandemic, for want of a better word, probably around for 18 to 24 months. So potentially investing training with our key members of our team will be really important. Technology should be an enabler, and although as an industry we are often slow to adopt, any investment that we can make in software to make those very valuable team members' lives and jobs a little bit easier will probably not just be vital but crucial. And maybe it's time, I like what you were saying earlier, VERYAN, about reviewing your operational procedures. Looking at, you don't have to have those newspapers delivered. Why don't you get your concierge or your guys to do something different? Maybe stripping back and looking what you're actually doing operationally, seeing what you need, what's key to your guest, and focusing on that, maybe rather than some of the other things. And I suppose for me, with 100 years in the industry, we've all come through many, many, many buzzwords in the industry. And if we focus that, or understand that they might be focused on 30% of the industry, but there's 70% of the industry with independent, wonderful hotels, that those things will never be relevant for, or not as relevant. And actually some of those hotels aren't getting some of the simple things right, such as your guest communication, your market segmentation, Sam, that you were talking through, understanding your guest booking journey, the staff training, and of course, very close to my own heart, the pricing. So that's maybe where we need to concentrate is getting those simple things right. So we've got about 50 seconds left. So I know the words of ABBA. Any, just shout them out and we can sing them for you, will we, Carol? No? No? Okay, ladies, thank you so much for allowing us on stage. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.